Good morning. Welcome to Shields and Arrows, where we defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship. I'm Pastor Mark Baze. I hope you had a great weekend, and I appreciate you joining us. I do apologize for not having anything for you over the weekend with a morning sermon or our Jonah series, but that was because I was gone on a weekend-long firearms training course, a pistol class, actually. Learned some interesting things, not just about shooting, but about life, mentality, and matters concerning even theology. We'll talk about that as well. And we have some news to get to, of course, things involving the presidential race, things involving a interesting hostage situation in Florida. And so we're going to get into all of those matters. But I hope that you're doing good. I appreciate all of you continuing to support this ministry. It's one of those things that I'm not sitting here thinking as a young man that I have a deep wisdom that many of you don't have. Probably on the contrary, many of you are very experienced and you have a lot of wisdom to offer me, but I realize not everybody is simply willing to or interested in doing some kind of daily show format in which they get up in front of people and talk. So hopefully what I am doing is basically being a voice for you, that you can have somebody out there who does stand for your values. Maybe every now and then I can offer a fresh perspective. After all, many of you have full-time jobs and obligations, and you do not have the time necessarily that I get to enjoy of studying things, considering theology and those matters. So with that, I get to maybe offer you something in that aspect. But if nothing else, it's simply me being a sort of a stand-in for you, for what you believe in and what you value, because you do care about defending the faith, the family, and the fellowship. And so with that, let's talk about a few things. We're going to get into the firearms course here in just a little bit. But we're also going to talk about some matters concerning politics and some important things that are going on in the world today. So I appreciate each and every one of you for being here. And with that, first and foremost, I don't know if you've realized this, but I think as of right now, the indictments on Trump have not done really anything. I think the liberals, the Democrats, those who weaponize the DOJ against their political opponents, they are not quite receiving the outcome they were hoping for. They really did think that if they made the opponent, whoever that opponent was, a convicted felon, this would make it all about the indictment of Trump, the verdict on Trump, and nobody's going to be concerned about Biden. That hasn't worked for several reasons. Number one, right now people are not just really happy with how things are going. They do not like the fact that inflation's crazy. They do not like the fact that the border's open. They don't like seeing all of this weak-kneed stuff going on overseas, whether it concerns Ukraine and Russia or Israel and Hamas, and we just have these never-ending wars that don't get any kind of resolution. They don't like that. So there's one aspect of it. They understand that right now these problems that are occurring are not due to Trump. These problems are due to Biden, because whenever Trump was in office, we did not have Russia invading Ukraine. You did not have Israel and Hamas in a war. You did not have inflation the first 3 years. The fourth year there were some things that took place, maybe some shenanigans that took place that led to some of those issues. But they're not putting the current state of affairs on Trump's shoulders. Those are Biden's and Biden's alone. Biden doesn't seem like an empathetic person. He seems like really I don't know other term than a mean old man. That is really how he comes across. He comes across as somebody who doesn't have sympathy. He just seems angry. He seems like he wants to do what he wants to do and then be left alone, and he can't be bothered if you ask questions of him. He's going to do exactly what he wants to do. And so people don't like it. It's not a good look. It's one of those things that if you are an older person, you have several things to offer. You have wisdom to offer and experience and all those things that go with it. But also, the other thing that you have to offer is some kindness into this world. The embodiment of all things good and pure is a loving grandmother, right? Or loving grandfather. Because they've been around the world a time or two, they understand what you're going through, even though you may think they're out of touch and don't understand, they do. And that gives them a level of sympathy for others because they understand what it's like being a young person trying to find your way in the world. They understand what it's like trying to be a young parent, not knowing what you're doing, trying to raise children. So they're going to have a lot of sympathy for you, and you just get a better perspective on life as you get older. You understand what really matters and you understand what doesn't. If you lack the loving kindness, compassion aspect that Biden claimed to have, and they tried to sell it back in 2020, what do you have to offer? And Biden doesn't have anything to offer in terms of wisdom either. The only energy that Biden has put into wisdom or savviness is just political savviness. He puts his finger up in the air, sees which ways the political winds are blowing, and he goes that direction. So he has nothing to offer people that the older generation should be offering. He doesn't have actual wisdom. He doesn't have any kindness or gentleness or any of those good qualities that you would associate with somebody who has experience. Therefore, there's nothing about Biden that is appealing. And all focus is on him. Therefore, they tried to take it and spin it that Trump is a felon. How can you vote for the felon? You've got to vote for Biden, removing any option from the equation. Here's the issue. They shot themselves in the foot because they shot themselves in the foot weaponizing the bureaucracy. If you think back over the years, going even all the way back to Obama's tenure, and obviously we know there has been corruption in the agencies for a long time. It's become much more well-known and prevalent, I would say, in recent decades. Biden weaponizing his own departments, Obama weaponizing his departments. We can see through the facade of the three-letter agency. And that makes them mad. The FBI hates it that you do not look at them as the heroes of the Republic. The CIA hates it that we don't look at them as the heroes of the Republic. And therefore, they have destroyed all credibility, so we do not look at them and we do not value them for what they think they are. And maybe what they once were. If you look at the history of the OSS, the CIA, they've done some good work for the nation in times of war, and even the Cold War, things like that. But they have absolutely destroyed their credibility. So now they expect us to value the judgments and the testimony of these bureaucracies now that Trump has been indicted by the Department of Justice and the FBI has targeted him, raided Mar-a-Lago. They have completely undermined all credibility that they have, so why would we care what that indictment is? If they really wanted to have a strong case, they shouldn't have been weaponizing those agencies all this time. It would have a lot more weight, it would have a lot more punch if people actually had confidence in the DOJ. We've already seen how the DOJ has some serious problems, and you know a problem that a lot of people don't address? Derek Chauvin. Nobody truly thinks, at least those that are not completely owned by the ideology, that he received a fair trial. There was nothing in the trial that supported the case levied against him that he committed first-degree murder. Therefore, we've already seen in just a few years previously that the DOJ is not a serious department. And you can even go further back to that. You look at O.J. Simpson, trials such as that. We know that there is a political aspect to these trials. It's been going on for some time now. Therefore, they have destroyed all credibility. They have absolutely shot themselves in the foot, and so as a result, we do not have trust in them. Therefore, the felony conviction of Trump carries no serious weight. We do not look at that and feel a sense of weight to it. It means nothing. It's the same thing as the felony charges against Trump have come to have the same weight as when they call him Hitler or a racist or a fascist or a dictator or an authoritarian, totalitarian, whatever terminology they may throw at him. It carries no weight. Same way when it comes to us. We do not care anymore. Used to, there was nothing worse than being called a racist. If you were called a racist, then you were just scared to death that you were going to be persona non grata in society and no one's going to speak to you. Nowadays, it doesn't matter, because if you say it's not good for us to have the borders wide open and letting everybody just flood into the country and not caring who's coming in, they call you racist for it. The word means nothing. If you say, I do not want my children to be taught gender ideology, you are called transphobic. That means nothing. It has no weight to it. It doesn't matter. Or even they've used the term Christian nationalist to a point where if you say, maybe our laws should have some fundamental biblical truths to them, and the laws that we have in the book should acknowledge some of those very foundational principles to our Constitution, that we are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. They say that, oh, you Christian nationalist, or you Christian totalitarian, whatever terminology they want to use, it doesn't mean anything because they have decided to just throw phrases around. Therefore, it has no substantial meaning. And we don't care what they say because at the end of the day, none of that actually matters, what their opinion is. Therefore, this indictment of Trump doesn't really have any weight to it, and you're seeing that. He held a rally outside of New York finally because the verdict had come down, and he went to the swing state of Nevada, however y'all want to call it. And he actually had a good turnout. Thousands of supporters came out to support him for his rally. It was not great conditions. It's getting hot out there. It's in the desert. So a lot of people came to support Trump. And Trump is doing a good thing. Obviously, he has talked about his own charges against him, but he also continues to acknowledge Biden's failures. From the Daily Wire here, quoting Trump, referring to illegal immigrants. They are totally destroying our black population. They're just totally destroying our Hispanic population, Trump said. And you know what else they're destroying? They're killing unions. I mean, he's trying to attack them on all fronts that really Joe Biden would consider to be his strengths, right? He's counting on the black support. He's counting on the Hispanic support. He's counting on unions. So Trump's trying to attack Biden from all those areas. Hopefully it works. Obviously, in a swing state, he's going to try to play a little bit more political terminology. I don't know what's going to happen when the debates come. That'll be an interesting conversation, what happens whenever Trump actually gets on stage with Biden again. But I do feel like Trump is running a much more effective campaign than he did in 2020. So hopefully we'll see that they will be able to succeed and continue to push the matter. People do not like the open borders. We need to continue talking about the invasion, the child trafficking, women trafficking, you name it. So it is a serious matter to consider. Hopefully Trump can pull it out in November because Biden is not doing this country any good right now. Okay, let's talk about another interesting story that I'd like to share with you. And that was a hostage situation that took place at a bank in Fort Myers in Florida. This is also coming from the Daily Wire. So the incident happened, and this has just come out. The footage has just now recently been released. But it happened in February when an unarmed 36-year-old man armed with a knife and claimed to have a bomb entered a Bank of America branch in Fort Myers. He had 2 hostages at this point. They tried to negotiate with him, according to the story. And meanwhile, while having a hostage in a headlock with a knife to her throat, one of the SWAT team guys was able to take a rest off of his teammate's shoulder and actually take a shot through a computer monitor, hitting the bad guy in the head and killing him. So, a couple things. Number one, very good on law enforcement. Excellent execution of the actual act of stopping the threat. And so I want to congratulate them on that. It's very good that we have good, highly trained law enforcement officers. One of the things that I observed whenever I went and shot in this course, we had some OHP troopers, Oklahoma Highway Patrol. They did an excellent job. Most of them that were there were troopers. There were just some other law enforcement as well, but the troopers all showed that they could handle their firearms very, very well. And that's good. We need high standards for law enforcement. If we are going to be counting on these men to take an oath to do their jobs, then they need to be able to perform at high standards. And so congratulations to the SWAT team for an excellent job. And that's great. And I don't want to take anything from them, but let me now stop and say, why was this man able to get into that bank with a knife and then take a hostage before somebody shot him? That's the question I want to know. Why? And you may be thinking, what are you talking about? He took a knife in, he took hostages. What I'm saying is, why was there not somebody in that bank the second that he walked in with that knife that said, put that knife down or I'm going to put you down? This is once again the issue with gun-free zones. Banks will have signs that say no firearms. Now, as a citizen, you have to decide what you're going to do with that. Are you going to adhere to the sign, or are you going to decide to protect your family and others that day? That's my point. This man, what should have happened is he walked into that bank with a knife. Somebody said, put it down. He doesn't put it down, and they shoot him. Glad that the SWAT decided to act. But what if? What if he would have just started going on a stabbing spree and people were dying? This is where the everyday person needs to have the ability to carry a firearm wherever they need to. The idea of gun-free zones is absolutely absurd, whether it is for banks or any other location. The idea of even sporting events, of, oh, we can't have people carrying guns in the sporting events because they may get mad and get into a shootout. What an absurd thing. What an absurd thing to come up with. We have got to push a movement further and further to absolutely abolish gun-free zones. This concept of gun-free zones needs to become a thing of the past. That in the history books, kids will go back and read one day that once upon a time, people were so crazy, they were murdering babies before they were born, and they thought that the idea of having a sign that said no guns was actually going to keep guns out of there. Therefore, this whole story just points to the issue of gun-free zones. Schools, get rid of your signs that say no guns. Knock it off. Knock it off. Quit making yourself a target. If you are a business and you have a sign that has no gun zones on there, it is absolutely ignorant. It is absolutely ignorant. I'll tell you a story right now. I'm diet myself. On our way back from a class, this was a rifle class 2 years ago. We stopped at a gas station in Arkansas. And not really knowing the area, may not have been a very good area. I don't know. We just had to stop and get gas. Well, me and my brother-in-law, he's pumping gas. I need to go to the restroom. Ahead of me, going into the convenience store, is a family. It was a mother, father, I think a little boy and a little girl. A little boy and a little girl, little kids. I walk up to the door, and I'm carrying concealed. And there's a sign that says, no firearms, concealed or otherwise. You know what I did? I walked right into that store. Because I was not about to go back and leave my gun and then just hope that that man was doing his job. Now, should he be doing his job and protecting his family? Yes. But I was not about to be willing to live the rest of my life if something was to happen and those two little kids, that little boy and that little girl were going to die that day because I did not do my job as a man. So therefore, I completely ignored that sign. I could not care less what that sign had to say. Also, I had a wife And at the time I had one child, I had a son expecting their daddy to be home. And I was not about to let some evil person take my wife's husband and my son's father away from them that day. We have got to get to a point where gun-free zones are a thing of the past. Malls are a massive target because what does every mall have? Every mall has that sign, no guns, gun-free zone. How ignorant are we going to be? Churches, if you got a sign that says no guns, gun-free zone, how ignorant are you? You better have a sign that says, people in our church carry, or we're going to shoot you in the face if you try to do anything bad. And that is that's the heart of the matter at the end of the day. So with that, the whole story of the SWAT team, excellent job. It's great to know that there are professionals that can take care of business when they need to. At the same time, that should have never had to take place. There should have never been a hostage situation. A SWAT team sniper should have never had to take that shot, because what there should have been is there should have been a daddy in that bank. The second that thug walked in with a knife, he drew his gun, gave him one warning and one warning only, and then put him on the ground with as quick and violent a force as possible. Plain and simple. Therefore, you need to decide. If you are a father, you have a responsibility to be a protector. Furthermore, if you are a wife, a mother, you have a responsibility to be prepared as well. You cannot count on people to be there to save you. You have to take some responsibility. See, an interesting question. I'll respond to this before we get into our what I learned in our gun class, which was interesting. So Chuck says, question, what happens to you when you are forced to use your gun in a gun-free zone? I don't tell anyone if I carry or not because it's none of anyone's business. Right. They're not going to know if you don't tell them. And there may or may not have been times whenever I had a gun where I wasn't technically supposed to have one. You know, just sometimes accidents happen. So with that, let's say that, I don't know, I'm at a bank and I just happen to forget or miss that there's a no gun sign on the bank. And there's some guy who comes in with a knife and he's going to stab the little secretary up front, or he's going to try to take her hostage, and I pull out my gun and I shoot him and I kill him. There is not going to be a thing happen to me because, number one, law enforcement is not going to be there. You know when they're going to get there? They're going to get there in probably 5 minutes, maybe a little bit quicker. They ain't going to be there when that happens. That bad guy is going to be dead on the ground before anybody even calls him, as long as the person carrying the gun can do his job. Or at the very least, let's say, draw the gun, bang, 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 and I don't hit him or I wound him and he goes out of the bank. Guess what happens? We call 911. And law enforcement goes to hunt him down, or they come to the bank. By that point, I've already holstered my gun. What are they going to do? What are they going to do to me? Or that hypothetical person? I would argue the bank can try to push something all they want, but then the lawyers can just argue, but this person just saved your bank from a hostage situation. No telling what could have happened. They could have saved lives. I see it being a wash. I don't think they're going to try to. Now, if you're in a different state, let me say this. If I'm in Oklahoma, that's different than if I'm in California. If I'm in California, that bank would try to do something. But if you are in a school, for example, let's say it's a parent event, kids are doing a program at the school during the day, dad comes to the school, he's carrying, somebody comes in to try to kill the kids, and that daddy kills them, stops the bad guy, saves the day, there ain't going to be a thing happen to him. And guess what? There ain't going to be a law enforcement officer anywhere nearby. Even if there's an SRO at that school, that SRO will probably not be able to respond in time. So that's my thought on the matter. It's an interesting question, and it's one that you have to weigh if you're going to be carrying a gun on a daily basis. And if you're a father, if you're a daddy, you have a responsibility to do that. And most people, they just, like banks, they do it for liability purposes. It's not out of moral principle or anything. there's some lawyer, some insurance company that says, you better have that on there. You better put it on there. You're going to be liable. If you don't have a no firearms sign, there's somebody that comes in and robs the bank. Somebody could sue you because they were going to say you should have had a sign up that said no firearms. So much of this is just all lawyers. It's all a bunch of paperwork nonsense. That's all that is. Insurance companies are the reason for so many absurd rules and regulations. All right, so there's my thoughts on all of that. Okay, now let's talk about this interesting pistol class that I went to. So we went to a pistol class in northeastern Oklahoma with a professional competition shooter. His name's Mark Smith, very, very talented shooter. And the interesting thing about him is he's not a law enforcement guy, and this is going to be relevant to what we're going to be talking about, why this parallels with some things concerning theology. So I want you to stay with me, okay? Stay in the right mindset here. Follow along with what we're going to be talking about. This is important. He is not a law enforcement guy. He is not a SWAT guy. What he is he's a normal, everyday person. Before he was doing this, he was a plumber, pipe fitter. And he decided that he was going to get good at shooting. And he went to a lot of competitions, and he figured out how to become a good shooter, to be a very capable shooter. He's very good with a pistol. He's very good with a rifle. He can shoot at distance. He can shoot up close. He's very fast. He's very accurate. And that's just from a lot of dedication. He teaches in a way fundamentally different from many instructors. Most instructors, you need to understand, are either law enforcement or they are military. Now pay attention to all this, okay? It's going to be relevant. There is an idea that dominates the training world when it comes to firearms. That if you are not law enforcement or if you are not military, you have no business teaching anybody about firearms. That's just a reality. The people that are in law enforcement, this is not all of them. I'm simplifying this. I'm not saying this describes everyone. But a large number of law enforcement think that if you are not a police officer, you have no business teaching anybody about how to shoot because you don't know anything. That's their premise. Or if you are not in the military, you cannot teach anybody to shoot because you don't know anything. Mark Smith, JBS Training Group, he flies in the face of that. He has dedicated thousands of hours, probably at this point tens of thousands of hours to training. And I've seen it myself. I see him shoot. He has been, so far at this point in my life, the best shooter I've ever seen. He has zero law enforcement experience. He has zero military experience. He's going to tell you that he's not about to say that he knows how to be a police officer or he knows how to be a soldier in combat. What he's going to do is he's going to tell you how to shoot. And he's going to give you some things to think about when it comes to shooting. That is going to be very helpful for you if you ever find yourself having to shoot at somebody who may be shooting back at you. He takes a very simple and straightforward approach. He is not an intellectual elitist. He does not use fancy terminology that you do not know. He does not use phrases or creates his own type of language or theories or processes that you have to learn and you have to write down in order to remember. He will talk to you in the most simplest of terms. He could teach a 9-year-old how to shoot using very simple terminology that a 9-year-old will understand. And yet, he is incredibly good at it. There was a lot of things that I figured out that I've got to work on. There's some things that I can do well, but I figured out there were things that I could do well that do not matter in some other context. For example, let's just, like the draw. I've worked a while to get a decent draw. I can, like for example, I had a 1-second draw and then I had a .94 draw. And I probably could have went a little bit faster if I wanted to. that's great. And at distance, if I'm not trying to control the recoil of the gun, I can shoot very accurately. But when it comes to trying to shoot fast at distance, I'm not good at it. And he has the ability to explain how. And what he explained to me was, there's nothing that can replace you figuring it out yourself. You have got to go do the work. You can listen to the theories of training experts all day long, but until you go do it yourself, you're not going to be able to figure this out. So far, what have we learned? Number one, you do not have to be a law enforcement officer or a military person, somebody who has served, in order to teach how to shoot. What does this tell me? Let's expand the idea. Let's expand the concept. You do not have to be considered an authoritative person, an intellectual elite person. You don't have to have the credentials in order to be good at something. How do we equate this to theology? How many times have we had somebody defer to the so-called experts? The seminary professor, the pastor of the big church, you name it, the language experts, the linguists. They will appeal to people with PhDs, with doctorates, those that come from institutions of credibility. And they will say, you need to prioritize that view because they're the ones that have the authority on the matter. You should not be questioning these so-called experts in any area concerning their expertise. Why would you question them? They're the experts. Why would you question somebody on matters of kingdom theology whenever you have this professor with a PhD teaching kingdom theology at this prestigious school? Why would you question somebody on soteriology who has this high level of accolades at you fill in the blank church or seminary? They're the experts. Who do you think you are to question them? You need to listen to what they have to say. They're the experts on the matter, not you. What he demonstrates is the common everyday man can do an excellent job and be better than what many of those so-called experts are that don't have the accolades because they put in the time and work. What does this equate to us in theology? This equates to us that you do not have to take the authority of somebody and let that be the deciding factor on what you should believe about the Bible. It does not matter what the seminary professor believes. You can take it with a grain of salt, and I would say a very small grain of salt. You do not have to agree with what the big pastor of big church says. You, the everyday person, can devote the time and the effort yourself to studying the Bible, studying theology, and you can become an excellent Bible student, and you will very possibly find that they, the experts so-called, are wrong. And that's another point that Mark Smith made in our class, that many, I think that he would even agree with this statement, the majority of firearms instructors fundamentally do not know how to teach, and they misunderstand many important concepts. And they have caused a lot of people to be confused about shooting because they think they know what they're talking about. They think they're the experts on the matter. They think what they're teaching is correct, when in reality they have some misconceived assumptions, some preconceived notions, and they think just because they have the title of officer or sergeant, former so-and-so, former SWAT guy, former special operations guy, you name it, that they know what is the best way to do something. They understand a concept better than everybody else. Mark Smith is standing there saying, this is not the case, because your credentials don't mean anything. What do you actually know about the concept? Have you spent the time to understand it? The mainstream view of the most likely majority of firearm instructors do not get it right. If the mainstream view of many firearms instructors do not get it right. Is it possible that other areas of life, whether it's science or theology, they may not have it right? Think about the scientific world. The story of science is the vast majority of science getting it wrong until somebody gets it right. And then that person gets rejected initially. And then finally people come around to it. Why can't the same be true for theology? Why are we sitting here and acknowledging that, yes, there have been times when the vast majority of people have been wrong about something. They've been confused about something. And then we're going to treat it as, in the world of theology, why would you teach this strange doctrine that you're supposed to divide the Bible, that Paul's ministry is different than Peter's? Augustine said, the experts said, that today's seminary professors say, that's not the point. The point is not what they say. The point is, what is the evidence? What happens whenever you stop repeating the creeds and catechisms of men and simply take the Bible for what it says? Once again, going back to this pistol class, he used very simple language. He did not use fancy acronyms. He did not use fancy terminology. He used very basic, foundational language that every person who has a general understanding of the English language can hear, comprehend, understand, and apply. If we can take the same approach in theology and say, how about we try taking the Bible for what it says? And if it says that the sacrifice was needed to have atonement for sin, then we can say the sacrifices were required, that they had to be done, that there was a time in the Old Testament when if you wanted forgiveness, you had to do something. And what you call doing something is a work. You have to do that thing. It's an act. It's an action. You have to go and take the sacrifice to the priest. That work has to be done in order for you to have forgiveness. Why can't we just take the Bible for what it says? There's so many professors in seminaries that are just like firearms instructors. There's so many firearms instructors that have their own special acronyms and terminology, and they think they are the smartest man in the room, and they think that the common man is stupid and that you cannot teach them anything. The truth is, they have limited what they can learn because they think they already know. And if they hear anything at all that runs contrary to what they've been told, then they are going to shut it off and not hear it. The reason why the people that are in this group that understand and value rightly dividing the Bible is because they're people that have a small enough ego to question whether or not what they've said and believed is not actually right. I had an ego check at that class. I've got a lot of things I've got to work on because the things I thought I was doing good, I'm not necessarily doing good on. I've got to fix it. We also have to stop elevating people. In the training world, there are instructors in firearms that are so elevated that you cannot dare question them because they speak with apostolic authority in the gun community. Those are just men. Why do we have these people that we elevate so highly and treat them as if they are infallible? That is a man the same way that you are. I promise you, if you cut him, he bleeds. So this act of elevating PhDs over anybody else is a silly thing to do. It is a silly thing to do. And I am not sitting here saying that I've read every single book out there. Far from it. I probably should do a lot more reading. But what I am telling you is whenever I sit down and I read a theology book, and I'm in seminary, I have to read theology books at times, and I see this thing in which it talks about the kingdom, and then it rolls right into the kingdom authority of God today, I instantly know that I'm dealing with somebody who does not take a literal view of the Bible because they have not considered what the scope of the kingdom is according to what Scripture says. And I'm not saying it's easy to get your kingdom theology fully nailed down precisely. There are some passages you have to work on. You've got to figure out what to do with them. What I'm telling you is if you are just taking the kingdom so loosely that you can throw that word around without feeling the need to give it any kind of context, you're not studying your Bible correctly. Christianity throws that word around all the time without any idea what they're even saying, without any idea about what the Bible says about it. They will throw the word elect around as if they have any idea what that word says. You better specify. And if you're going to argue that we're the elect, you better give a good argument. And you better be able to explain yourself why, in other areas, the elect has a very specific definition, and why do you get the ability to just expand it? Now, there's some who can articulate that. There's some that are in our field even who would say that the elect is a term that can apply to us, and they'll give you their articulation of it. Okay, if you can give an articulation why, then that's fine. But many today can't, and that is even true for professors. They will try to have fancy terms they'll use to explain things away, but they don't actually explain anything. They will find fancy ways to discount the Byzantine family without ever actually giving a good reason why to discount the Byzantine family. They will say those thousands and thousands of copies don't matter because all that matters is how many different types of variances are there. Therefore, they get to completely discount how many massive numbers of manuscripts exist because they can bring it all down on the same level with the Alexandrian because it's all about the number of variations. And you're just supposed to accept, oh yeah, that's their logic, and that logic's correct. Is that logic correct, though? Logic is just a form of thinking. It's an approach to thinking, considering, analyzing something. The atheists do this all the time. They will just argue some random logic that allows somehow for life to come into existence. And then their circle will just say, oh yeah, that's right, without ever challenging them on the matter. Why can we not have those same conversations? Those things absolutely matter. And so the common everyday man should be able to call those into question and have that conversation. So it was very enlightening. I encourage you to do things that challenge yourself. This class was challenging. There were really good shooters there, and I was not the best one. I can tell you that much. And so we need to be able to do those things and have conversations with people. If there's people in this, chat or listening or you watch later and you disagree with things I say, that's fine. I'm not saying I'm not going to have a conversation with you. It's good for me to have conversations with you. But I'm giving a defense to a degree for what I've been trying to say for a while now. If I've got somebody over here in the firearms world that's saying the same thing, he's made the same observations that the elites, those that are considered to be the experts on the matter, have a lot wrong and confused, is it possible that the people over in theology that are considered the experts can have a whole lot wrong as well? And maybe we fundamentally misunderstood some things and the common man can actually put some of this together. That's what I'm trying to get at here. All right, I'll look at some of these comments, and I have an exciting announcement for you that I'll close out with here in just a minute. Nancy says Christians should come together and start their own bank in their community. I was a teller once upon a time, so if you start a bank, I guess I could be the teller, but that's about it. I can't offer much other than that. I carried money out to the ATM. That was interesting. It's the most money I ever held in my hands at one time. There are some interesting things. And Nancy also talked about the matter of health cost sharing. There is a way to do that. There's got to be, man. It's getting crazy. Cleo Geo says, I have worked financial. There is no workaround regarding starting a financial institution outside of the government. Yeah, it's all so hand in hand. Every bit of it. The government has put its paws into so many things. So many things. That's why so many things don't work good anymore. Dale Russell, I think he's talking about our theology questions from last week. I think you and I are pretty much in agreement on the doctrine of original sin. Good. I would, however, like a little clarification on Romans 7, lost man or saved man. That is generally the debate. In short, I can answer it right now, I guess. In short, I would say it's talking about, Paul's talking about himself, I would say. And I certainly think Paul had received the grace gospel at that point. So in Romans chapter 7, I think this is a saved man. But even in the terms, though, lost and saved, I'm not sure that's even relevant. I think it's just kind of more of a man in general. And this is where things get tough, because we have a doctrine of, in the evangelical world, man, a saved person, you're going to fundamentally change. That is so much of what I was taught growing up by some preachers, that if you did not have a radical change in your life, you were not actually saved. That if you did not go from being a terrible, awful, wicked person to pure as the driven snow 99.9% of the time, you did not actually receive the gift of salvation. And they create that doctrine that you are all of a sudden going to be a completely different person. That only works in church on a Sunday sermon. The second that you start looking in the world and observing, I don't think that holds up very well, because you know what? You know some moral people, the Mormons are some moral people. And probably when it comes to abstinence from whether it's immorality of all sorts, they may do a very, very much a better job than a lot of Baptists. Because every Southern Baptist shrieked and covered their ears and gnashed their teeth. You know who else is pretty moral in a lot of ways? I would say probably the Indian people I'm talking about India here. Everyone I've known of, they seem to be principled. They do seem to have a sense of family, mothers, fathers. I've yet to come across an Indian family, as far as I know. Now, I could be wrong. I don't know if I've ever met an Indian family that had a divorced mother and father. I don't know that I know of one. Those that I've met when I was younger and college and now older, I just don't know of one. I'm not saying it's the only metric, but I would be interested to compare the rates of divorce in Indian communities, culture, compared to American Christian culture. How about that one? And Indians, these are not necessarily Christians. These are holding to, somebody help me. It's a polytheism. The name is escaping me right now. Hinduism. So I've seen Hindu people be very moral when it comes to matters of marriage and family, raising children and everything. I think that I've seen a number of people, I've seen people that don't have much regard for Christianity in general. Now, maybe they may say, yeah, God's real, but they're not exactly going to tell you they adhere to Christian theology. Live some pretty moral lives. It's not very persuasive. When you get out of the church on a Sunday sermon and you start looking around the world, you're going to see the reality that there are moral people that exist outside of Christianity. And in fact, a lot of those people are pretty moral people. And that's one of the things that Christianity had kind of burned themselves on. And maybe that was true for some of those fundamentalists of past ages. And some of it's just due to Hollywood making Hollywood stories. But they have burned themselves. Christians are going to act a certain way, talk a certain way. And then the second that they don't, it makes Christianity look false, doesn't it? Because if you bake into your theology cake that Christians are going to behave X, Y, Z, this is what you end up doing. You have two options. Number one, Christianity's wrong because there are Christians that don't behave X, Y, Z, or those are not real Christians. And what have you done? The second you do that, what did you do? It seems subtle, but this is what you do. You insert works into salvation. That's what happens. Whenever you say a Christian's going to behave X, Y, Z, you have to either say, the second that somebody who's a professing believer does not behave X, Y, Z, Christianity's false, or that person's not actually saved. And now you've done this. You've said faith plus works. Faith plus works is required for the genuine salvation experience. Therefore, it's a problem. Christianity's got to knock it off. We've got to knock it off. It creates a serious weak point for us. It makes Christianity, and I use the term Christianity, I know there's right dividers that will say, Christianity refers to the Jew, or Christians were Jews who believed that Jesus was the Messiah. Yes, of course, but just bear with me. It's a weak point, and that is a crack in the armor, and we've got to plug that hole, and we've got to say, knock it off. The doctrine that says, and they're going to, they may quote James, but the problem is James is not written to us. James is written to the Jewish people. Is there important principles in that? Of course. If you read something and you're supposed to do it and you don't do it, you messed up. It's a problem. It's not okay. And you can't accept it as okay. And I'm talking to myself as much as I'm talking to anybody. Because I'm not as pure as the driven snow. But we have to address this issue of saying a Christian's going to behave X, Y, Z, because it makes Christianity look very weak. And it makes us look like Jell-O. And I'm not about the Jell-O type theology, like Mormonism. Mormonism is a Jell-O theology. You cannot get them to stand on anything. They will squish and they will wiggle their way around anything. Because if you ask them, are you saved by faith alone? Absolutely saved by faith alone. And then you start pressing them on the matter of, well, can a person genuinely be saved if they don't be a part of the Mormon church, but as long as they have faith? And then they'll get really squishy really fast, and they'll start kind of hem-hawing and never come out and just say something. If you press them on the matter of the Trinity, they'll get really jello-y real fast, and you can't get them to nail down on anything. Christianity's the same way. As it stands today, you'll have somebody say, salvation by grace through faith, not of works. That's great. Now, what if a Christian gets a divorce? What if a Christian has a drinking problem? What if a Christian does this or that? Well, I don't know. That's it's cause for question. I don't know. Maybe they're saved, but the fruit's got to be there. Well, now you're going back on what you said. And you can say, oh, genuine faith produces real works, all you want. But it becomes an arbitrary standard. That's the problem. The standard's arbitrary. One preacher will say this is the standard, another preacher will say this is the standard. What is it? Is there a standard or is there not? It becomes Jell-O theology. And it's a serious issue, and we've got to address it. All right. I agree with Randy, Nancy. I think that James was written before the mystery. And even if James wasn't, you can still tell that James was written to the Jewish people and not us. All right, now, I got exciting news, and I don't know if she's on yet today. My mom had her last radiation treatment this morning. I think she's all done. I don't know if she's done right now, but she went in at like 9:30 this morning, Central Time, to have her final radiation treatment. And it has been basically a year ago today, whenever we got the news. I just want to tell you how incredible my mom is. There was a lot going on. At this time, we had found out that Mary was pregnant. That's my wife. I used her first name, as if you just couldn't look it up and find it easy. That's how the internet works. But my wife found out she was pregnant with triplets. It was scary, because that's scary stuff. You don't know how that's going to go, and we were dealing with a lot, and then she gets that news. We were hit with a lot of stuff last year. It was a very challenging time. But my mom has been so incredible. She has not let it hold her back. She was there every time we needed her. She still is there every time we need her. Even though she wasn't feeling the best, she did everything she could to help us as much as possible. Whenever Jake, my son, needed to have somebody watch after him, she was there, and she's an incredible woman. And I have had such admiration for her, seeing what she's gone through and how she's handled it. Her confidence in the Lord, her joy in Him has not wavered one bit. And no matter what the future has in store, I'm just so thankful that I have my mom and her love for us and how strong she was. My dad being there with her, and I think he probably went with her today. My dad just showing a perfect example of everything that a father, a man should be, in supporting my mom and through all that. And I just wanted y'all to know that I have an amazing mom. And don't think that your life doesn't impact people. My mom's life has had a major impact on me, and seeing what a great and amazing example she is of somebody who has taken the less than ideal situations that she's found herself in, and she has made the most of it. And so, Mom, I'm so proud of you. If you're watching right now, I love you, and I am just so thankful that I get to call that amazing woman my mother. And she is an amazing person. And so if y'all know my mom, y'all congratulate her today. If you're friends with her on Facebook or whatever, let her know. Tell her how happy you are for her, how I'm proud of her that I am, and I would really appreciate it. And I just wanted to share that with y'all because that's just so encouraging to me. And I'm so thankful to have a mother like I do. So ladies, even though society says that mothers is not the most important job that women need to have, it is. It absolutely is. And don't let anybody tell you different. The people that you work for in your jobs are not going to remember you, but the ones that will remember you are your children, and that is the truth. And at the end of the day, even what I do, as a father, that's my most important role, because there will come a day, unless Christ comes back here in, 2124, 100 years from now. I don't know that there's going to be a plaque or a book or anything that has Mark Baze on it inside the church that I'm at right now, but my children will certainly remember me, and my children's children. So with that, I appreciate every single one of you. This is just Monday. We've got a lot going on this week. On Tuesday, which is tomorrow, we'll have more stuff to get to, whether it's politics, culture, theology, you name it. We'll have Theology Thursday on Thursday, right? Because that's what Theology Thursday is. So be ready to have your questions. Wednesday night, we're going to be a session number 3 of Philippians. If you didn't get to watch our second session, go ahead and watch that. Interesting stuff there. We're going to have to start probably getting to a little bit of rightly dividing as we go forward. Some interesting contextual things going on in Philippians I'm excited about. Sunday mornings, we are going to be covering Jonah, session 6, I believe, in chapter 2. Maybe it's session 5 of Jonah, chapter 2. We also are going to be covering in our morning service for Father's Day. We'll be in our Misapplied. That's a fun series. We only have 2 sessions in right now. We've looked at Joshua. We've looked at Korah's rebellion. Very important principles of not building doctrine from Old Testament Bible stories. Knock it off. Now, I'm not saying there's never a time to do it, but you don't want to derive the wrong doctrine from Old Testament Bible stories and from historical events. So with that, appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you all so much for your support, your encouragement, everything you do for this ministry, everything you do for my family. And until tomorrow, this has been Shields and Arrows, where we defend the faith, the family, and the fellowship. I am Pastor Mark Baze. You can go to markbazeministries.org to find out more about my ministry, how you can support my ministry. We got some exciting things that we are working on right now. Continue to help share our stuff, especially our new video on Bible translations. And with that, we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you all so much.